answers. Jay is able to call on you and just make things a little bit easier on this end for us. So everybody knows who's on here, and I think we're about ready to rock and roll. Okay, so I'm just going to cover a couple quick things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jay. Jay is going to be our moderator this evening, and I'm super excited to have him here with us. So welcome to our second night of Munch on This, and this will be, well, this is our second night out of 8 nights or 4 weeks that we'll be doing this. And then for those of you that don't know me, I'm Trish Faring. I'm the field representative and range management specialist for the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition. I started with them back full-time the same Monday that the state went into COVID-19 shutdown. So it was an awesome transition. My husband and I, we ranch north of Beach here, have 2 daughters that are here with us. Tonight, I'm going to introduce to you, most of you probably already know him, but Jay is going to be our moderator. Jay has a passion for soil health and for teaching and sharing that with others. We're super excited to have him with us this evening. And just a couple of housekeeping things. I guess we wish that we could be in person, but I also feel this is a great way to reach out to people and be able to reach people that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to visit with before. Let's see, if you have any technical difficulties, if you can send me a chat, or if you can go on, even if you're on Facebook Live, if you're having issues or something, put a post in the comments there and I'll try to watch those as well. We ask that you keep your device on mute, and if you want your video on, that's fine, doesn't make any difference to me. All of the sessions are being recorded. So this evening, we're also streaming this to Facebook Live. So the video will immediately load to Facebook Live and be available after we're done. The video, as far as going on our YouTube channel and the website, that will probably take place either tomorrow or possibly the early part of next week. So those will be available to go back and check into. That is all I have to cover. So Jay, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce our speakers, and I'm going to play the techie lady. So.
Okay, fantastic. We probably need one. So, well, good evening. And I just want to echo what Trish just said in regards to the series, Munch on This, and I think, you know, I'm interested anytime we can have livestock on the land or support entities that work in that direction. But special thank you to Trish and the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition for putting this event on. And we got off to a nice start on Tuesday evening, Tara and Josh Dukart. And something they mentioned that I jotted down was to learn to ask the right question. And I thought that was a pretty good comment, and kind of stuck with me. And the same applies. So it got us off to a nice start. So the same applies for this evening as we kind of go down this road and we understand what our own farm's mission and vision would be, our own goals. And then we start looking at a possible partner, and we understand their mission and vision and goals. And then I think it really helps us make this decision whether this is a good fit for any of these entities this evening. And all 3 are great entities, and we have 4 great speakers. And so we're going to start with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and then we're going to go to Ducks Unlimited, and we're going to close out with North Dakota Natural Resources Trust. And we're asking each of the speakers somewhere in that 10 to 15 minute realm. We want to be as flexible with you as you can. And I think we'll just kind of balance it out so everybody gets a good shot at the ball. So with that, we're going to start out with Steve Fairbairn. And Steve is the Assistant State Coordinator for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's Partners Program. And he's been with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for 21 years. So there's a fair bit of background information there. And all of which this has been with the Partners Program. So there was evidently, Steve, about 14 years in South Dakota as a field biologist, and now more recently 7 years in your present position. So this is a nice way for us to start out with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so we're going to go ahead then, Steve, and turn it over to you, if you would, please.
All right. Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Thanks, Trish. As I try to figure out the sharing here. Can you see the right screen?
Yes, yes, you
All
came
right.
through. You came through.
I've been good at we've been good at Teams here, but this is about my first time using Zoom, so bear with me just a bit. But thanks to the Grazing Lands Coalition, thanks for everybody joining us. Can't tell you how excited it is to actually see some different people. We've been working from home through the entirety of the COVID stuff, and so it's nice to be out of the house in a way anyway. So this technology is great. I can't imagine how we would have functioned through this without it. But this picture really represents the way we like to do our business. Our biologists like to go out and meet across the hood of a pickup, having a cup of coffee on somebody's kitchen table. We pride ourselves on being a flexible program, meet the needs of the landowner as well as the wildlife that we're entrusted with. Again, thanks for having me. And I don't know about being a great speaker like Jay just said, but I'm sure some of the other people will be. I'm going to start out by giving you a little history of the Partners Program. Started way back in 1987. We had some pretty visionary people. They realized that, especially in a state like North Dakota, where most of the habitat is on privately owned land, that if we were going to impact wildlife populations of migratory birds, we had to think outside of our own property boundaries. We had to find a way to develop a program that could work with private landowners. So, like I said, started in '87. Actually started right here. I think the original pilot states were North and South Dakota and Minnesota, and started primarily due to dwindling duck numbers. But now it's expanded to all 50 states. And again, our flexibility is that each state can administer the program as they see fit, so they can meet the wildlife and other needs of their particular state. We like I said, we pride ourselves in being flexible. We can work on a lot of different types of projects, but as it turns out, most of our projects fall into four main categories. So wetland creations, grassland restorations, grassland enhancements, and wetland restorations. Just gonna run through those sort of quick, just philosophically wise and kind of how we do things. Our bread and butter when our program first started was wetland creations. We found that if you could put water into a sea of grassland, it was really good for ducks. It was also really good for the ranchers. We developed multiple purpose ponds that could be used as livestock water, but were also good for waterfowl and other migratory wetland dependent birds. Because of a whole host of reasons, like complexity of projects, the expense of projects, the permitting aspects. But probably the biggest reason that we don't do very many of these anymore is because the availability of other water sources. We still do some wetland creations, but way fewer than we have in the past. Grassland restoration projects, kind of self-explanatory. Typically this involves putting marginal cropland back to some sort of grassland cover. We do have an emphasis on diverse native plantings, and one of my favorite projects that we do, and just because the win all the way around is, piece of marginal crop ground maybe should have never been farmed, put that back into grassland cover, and then incorporate that into a well-managed rotational grazing system. So we've put some of that grass cover back, and then we're managing it properly. Really win for everybody, but for our trust species, it's for, the grassland cover for grassland nesting birds. grassland enhancement projects. These are what we call rotational grazing systems or grazing systems. You know, all kinds of advantages to these things. You know, we help supply financial assistance for cross fencing, water developments. You know, we can be pretty creative. Anything that helps implement a grazing system. And I've been doing this for a long time, and we've always had this philosophy of really the benefit of supporting and encouraging ranchers and livestock to stay on the landscape, because we feel that that's the best possible management for the wildlife species that we're concerned about. And like I said, we've had this philosophy a long time. I feel like it's kind of commonplace. I know a lot of other agencies and organizations have that philosophy as well. And sometimes I feel kind of strange even saying it because it's so just ingrained in who we are. But every time I give a talk or something, there's always a few people, or at least one, that seems surprised that a wildlife agency has that philosophy about working with ranchers as being the best thing for wildlife. So I like to say it just in case there is that one or two out there that haven't heard that, but we do feel strongly about the power of collaborative conservation. I just throw this up there to show kind of where our philosophy's changed. And if you want to just focus on that column that's upland acres, if you look at in 2013, we did 4,700 acres or helped out on 4,700 acres. About that time, we were changing some philosophies and prioritizing grazing systems a little bit more. And now we're in that 40, 45,000 acre range, and I wouldn't be surprised if that continues to grow. But we all feel really strongly that this is really where our priorities need to be in this landscape. Wetland restorations, this is putting the hydrology back to where it was prior to conversion. So this would be restoring wetlands by plugging a drainage ditch, or sometimes removing a little bit of sediment in areas where there's been a lot of soil erosion. So really good projects for, again, the waterfowl and other wetland dependent wildlife species. This is a map of all of our project locations since the beginning of our program. Each one of those green dots is a different project area. And as you can see, we got pretty good coverage statewide, more limited to where the grass is. So you can kind of see the Coteau there by looking at the green dot through the center there, green dots through the center. And, been doing this a long time. So we've had a lot of completed projects. We've worked with a lot of landowners, and we've helped out on a lot of acres. So a lot of fun to be part of. This is who we are. I didn't put my name on here, or Scott McLeod, he's the state coordinator. But these are our biologists. These are where they're located, the areas that they work in, and a lot of you probably know some of these guys. Jay was talking about me being with the program for 21 years. It's not unusual. Nobody leaves our program. Our youngest biologist, newest biologist of these 6 is Mike Grau at Devil's Lake, and I believe he's been working for the Partners Program in North Dakota for somewhere around 18 years. All the rest of these guys have been here longer than that, some of them since the beginning of the program. So a lot of experience, a lot of friendships, a lot of relationships, a lot of knowledge about habitat, farming and ranching, a lot of community people. We've been in these places for so long. These individuals have that Monty Ellingson up at Crosby, he's coached half of the world up there in different sports. Just a real integral community member, and it's what makes our program click, is our relationships with people. And so we don't take that lightly. We encourage people to stay. It really, it makes a difference in a program, I guess, is some of the longevity. And final slide, partnerships are the key to success. We actually get very little funding from the Fish and Wildlife Service to do projects. Almost our whole budget is tied up into salaries and vehicles and office space and all that stuff. But thankfully, there is a whole bunch of partners that have similar objectives and goals, and we work together to get all these projects done. It's fantastic. You look around that slide, and there's a lot of great agencies and organizations with great people in there. And the one in the middle is a picture of some private landowners that are the key to the whole thing. We don't have landowners with an interest in improving their soil health and their grass, and then because of that, their grassland cover and their wetland health, our program just doesn't work. So a big thank you to all of these partners here. So that's all I got, Jay. I think you're on mute, Jay.
Got it. Thanks. So appreciate you letting me know I was still on mute. Speaking of mute, we're getting some background noise maybe in one of the locations. So if people want to check to see that they're actually on mute, unless they're going to speak, then obviously. But we were picking up a little background information or a little background noise in one of them. So if we could put them on mute until we need to actually talk. Just a couple things, Steve.
How do I get off this shared screen just before you go any further?
Yeah, you should be able to X out of there.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, real good, real good. I'm no authority on it. I usually just keep hitting buttons till something happens. And then... Okay, Steve, you kind of brought up long-term relationships, and what I guess what I've seen on something like that is they usually equate to trust. And so you get that trust factor involved, and I think that's when it really starts to get effective. And so I think you've shown that by some of this exponential growth that's occurred, and I think you got a group of people there that have been pretty committed to it. So I can see that as well. So you can send your questions in any time. We're going to save some time at the end to answer them. But you can get onto the chat and ship a question in anytime. Does that sound right, Trish? That's okay. So just go ahead and shoot your questions in, and we'll see that we can answer them best we can when we get toward the end. So, okay. Well, thank you very much, Steve. So with that, our second opportunity this evening is going to be with Ducks Unlimited, and it's going to be a combination. We're going to have Tanner Gu, who is a biologist, and we're going to have Emily Schwartz, who is an agronomist. And so we're going to have them tag team. And I'm going to start by I'm going to actually introduce both. And then Tanner, the two of you can just transition when you feel like it. So Tanner Gu is a biologist with Ducks Unlimited. And Tanner has spent most of his time working directly with farmers and ranchers to develop and deliver voluntary conservation programs that work well for producers and wildlife. And Emily, I believe, is quite a bit newer. She can tell us about that, but maybe in the past, 1 year approximately, somewhere's give or take. Emily is an agronomist with Ducks Unlimited, and she assists the biologist in delivering conservation programs. More specifically, Emily works with producers to identify cover crop goals and monitor soil health indicators. So with that, we're going to start with Tanner, if we can.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Excellent.
Good. Am I sharing a screen that looks like a PowerPoint? For some reason, I can't see that.
You are.
Okay, that's good. Well, thank you, Trish, and thank you, Grazing Lands Coalition, for putting this series. We really appreciate the partnership, and we're proud to be invited to speak and talk a little bit about what's going on at Ducks Unlimited right now. So at DU, our mission is to conserve, restore, and manage wetlands and associated habitat like grasslands for ducks. Pretty simple. And this is the team, I must have clicked off, there we go, that helps accomplish that mission in North Dakota. We have Dane, who spends most of his time up in the northwest part of the state. Robert is our other biologist in the northeast part of the state. I spend most of my time in the southeast part. And Emily, our newest hire, as Jay was mentioning, the newest member to the team, is our agronomist. And she's helping us really develop, build, and deliver our more soil health related programs. And that's something we'll, with our time today, we'll dig into just a little bit more. So as Steve was saying, for us too, I mean, the most effective way for our team to deliver our mission and accomplish our mission in a landscape like North Dakota that's predominantly privately owned and operated by farmers and ranchers is to work directly with farmers and ranchers. So like Jay said, we build conservation programs, we design them and deliver them to help folks with specific resource concerns and achieve their operational objectives at the most basic level, like the simplest way to put it, much like what Steve said. We're basically in the business of trying to find ways to keep livestock on the landscape and find ways to help people efficiently manage livestock and grasslands using livestock. It's the best tool I know of in most cases. So, you know, if there, and the idea behind that is that, you know, if there's grass around, or if there's grazers around, if there's livestock around, there's typically grasslands around. And in grassland dominated landscapes, we tend to see higher wetland densities, or at least wetlands that are at less risk of being lost or converted. And ducks do pretty well in those kinds of landscapes. So cows get along pretty well with ducks. So for all of those reasons, we have very, what I would call more traditional type of programs, almost identical to what Steve had mentioned in many cases. Wetland restorations, grassland restorations, to help restore some maybe more marginal soils or marginal cropland back to a grazing type system. We can help with fencing, perimeter fence, or something as simple or as important as, however you want to look at it, as cross fence to help enhance a grazing system, water systems, and those kinds of things. And we'll continue to have those. But over the last 5 or 6 years, as our team has been out delivering these programs, visiting with farmers and ranchers about these things, we started to notice a common question and some common themes. And one of those questions was, hey, do you know anybody, something like, do you know anyone, or do you guys have a program that could help me get some grazing infrastructure on cropland? I'm thinking about doing some aftermath grazing, or I've been doing some aftermath grazing, but I'd really like to maybe try some cover crops. I've heard those might be okay. And so, you know, logistically, the benefits made sense to us. Maybe the farmer or rancher was spending less time, or the cattle were spending less time in the yard. They were spending more time out on the fields, which is also translates to fuel savings and, you know, less manure spreading and things like that. Financial benefits, simple winter feed cost cuts. I mean, that all kind of made sense to us. But at the same time, we were also learning about what was happening biologically from really important partners. Mentors on the Grazing Lands Coalition have been doing some of these things for a long time. Local soil conservation districts have been doing these kinds of things and trying to teach these kinds of things for a long time, including the Minokan Farm and folks like Jay himself. I mean, I learned a lot of this stuff from Jay directly, and the timing was really good. And so you kind of put all those pieces together. We identified a need on the landscape. And so together with all these partners, we leaned on them to build a pretty simple conservation program that kind of caught or implemented all 5 soil health principles in one program. And so that's what we aim to do with the cover crop and livestock integration project proposal that we took to the North Dakota Outdoor Heritage Fund. It's short term, it's flexible, it's really simple. And the idea is to help people get started trying these new regenerative practices and then kind of back away and let people learn what works and importantly, what might not work for them. And so very simple 60% cost share for grazing infrastructure on cropland, and then cover crop seed. And importantly, we had some awesome partners again that helped us. Natural Resources Trust, for example, helped with portable windbreak panels for this to make, help people feel a little bit more comfortable that have never done winter grazing, to keep their livestock out of the yard just a little bit longer. That's an important piece. Millborn Seeds and Pulse USA were also new partners in this regard. They were willing to help, provide a small discount on cover crop seed mixes and some technical assistance on specific mixes for folks enrolled in the program. And then, without the North Dakota Outdoor Heritage Fund, this would not have happened at all. So most of this is funded by that program. And so here's a really simple example that describes exactly what this program was designed to do. A producer, a young producer up in the Devil's Lake area had approached Robert Ford, our biologist up there last fall, winter. Maybe Robert can chime in and clarify that, but not too long ago. This producer was pretty young. I think historically they were mostly doing they were farming. They didn't have a lot of livestock. He was really interested in building a herd and growing what little herd he had because he knew what livestock could do for his operational diversity. And he also knew what they could do for his soils and soil productivity on the stuff that some of the parcels he was farming. And so very simply, Robert was able to help with a pretty simple design where he had an interest in doing this with some fence and a water system and some cover crop seed. That's a big help to a person in that position, especially in a place like the Devil's Lake area where pasture and grazing opportunities are getting harder and harder to come by. This is also a really good example of how these kinds of programs complement our existing programs and our partners programs. So this producer also had some expiring CRP, and the Natural Resources Trust has a great program also through the Outdoor Heritage Fund that targets expiring CRP and is intended to help keep that habitat in grass specifically for grazing. And so they helped with, Robert was able to help with some fencing and additional water tanks and systems out there so he could have more grazing opportunity. And then all the way back to our very traditional or comparatively traditional programs, he had some marginal cropland that wasn't all that productive, or at least, wasn't making as much as he felt it should have been. And so we restored that back to grass through our traditional programs and put up some additional fence for yet another grazing opportunity. And so it's not meant to be, this example isn't meant to be like a cookie cutter type deal. It's just meant to get the wheels spinning a little bit and provide an example. And so circling back to the cover crop and livestock integration project, it's been a lot of fun. I think it's been pretty successful. These are locations of folks that have enrolled and are actively engaged in trying regenerative practices and all 5 soil health principles in some capacity across the state. Many of them for the first time. in putting all 5 pieces together. And so I think that's pretty neat. It's been a great learning experience. And along those lines, you know, we've been really excited to welcome Emily onto our team to help us learn more with a little different background than a duck biologist like myself, and specifically develop a soil health protocol that can help us learn hopefully some positive trends in soil health parameters as we move from, you know, just starting these practices through time. And so I wanted to turn it over to Emily to share a little bit about what she's got going on. And I don't remember, where's that at?
All right.
Well, and welcome, Emily. We're happy to have you this evening also.
Thank you. And thanks, Tanner, for that introduction and kind of setting up the background on the cover crop and livestock integration program. All right. Everything look good on your end? So like Tanner said, this past summer, our team at Ducks Unlimited started monitoring soil health indicators in some of the fields enrolled in the CCLIP program. Our goals with monitoring these fields were to learn more about how soils change when all or most of the soil health practices are applied, and to start tracking these changes over the years, and to share our observations with producers and partners. We decided on tracking calculations like the soil health score from the Haney soil health test. For the Haney test, we did a whole field composite sampling method. We mixed up the soil cores and sent them into the lab. We are also tracking water infiltration rates. For this, we used the single ring water infiltration method, and we did the test out in the field. So this would be the similar test that you would get if you got a water infiltration kit from the NRCS or another soil health organization. Additionally, we are recording soil compaction, temperature, and moisture, along with some biological indicators like earthworm observations. This last fall, we were able to start monitoring a more intensive site in central North Dakota, where we had 3 different management methods to compare. We took samples from CCLIP fields where there was minimal soil disturbance. The fields had soil armor on them, and cover crops and livestock are a part of the system. We also took samples from native pasture that's rotationally grazed, partly because we thought it would be an interesting comparison and partly because we were just interested to see what it would be. Additionally, we took samples from fields that are managed without any soil health in mind, I guess. So they annually plant 1 crop and livestock are not part of their system. For context, here is a screenshot of the results of a Haney soil health test. We are going to be looking at the soil health score or calculation, and this is made up of soil respiration or microbial biomass, and the soil health score also includes water extractable carbon, organic carbon, and nitrogen. So back to our intensive site. Here is some data that we collected from that site this fall. The average soil health score for the monoculture fields was a 9.8. For the CCLIP fields, it was a 12.9. And for the native pasture, we had 31.1. So for us, it was pretty encouraging to see that the CCLIP field kind of fell in between the other 2 managements. But we will continue to see if those trends continue throughout the year by monitoring them going out to sample a couple of times a year for the next few years. And with that, I'll wrap things up. We just started monitoring soil health indicators in some of our C-clip fields. And we're going to continue to do that this upcoming season. If you have any more interest in this and you'd like to discuss, or we can't get to your questions later on today, here is a page with all of our contact information. I kind of cover the whole state. Dane is up in the northwest part of the state, Robert in the northeast, and Tanner in the southwest. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Jay.
Okay, excellent. Very good. I appreciate your efforts on that and your presentation along with Tanner this evening. So thank you to both of you.
Yes, and I'm going to,
Yeah, I think you can X out of there and
yeah, thank you.
perfect. So very good. So that so far this evening we've had U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and we've also just now finished with Ducks Unlimited. And so what we're going to do is move next to North Dakota Natural Resources Trust. And we have Jesse Beckers is going to be with us this evening. And Jesse is the Energy Program Manager with the Trust. And his main responsibilities include developing, implementing, and managing trust projects to carry out the trust mission, which is to preserve, enhance, restore, and manage wetlands and associated wildlife habitats in this state. And so before coming to the trust, I found this pretty interesting. Jesse worked as a regional wildlife biologist with Pheasants Forever, and also worked as an environmental consultant in the oil and gas industry. So it gives you a pretty diverse background. So this evening we welcome you, Jesse. So we're going to turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Jay, and I appreciate your introduction. Half my presentation is now done, so I appreciate that.
No problem. Happy to help.
This may sound a bit tonight like the School of Redundancy School with some of these programs, but we all work pretty closely together. And as Jay mentioned, I worked previously to this position in the oil fields, hence the Bakken Development and Working Lands program. And just really excited with how the first program went. We started in 2018 with this program. Worked with a lot of partners, including the North Dakota Grazing Lands Coalition on developing this program and finding a program that would work specifically for landowners, ranchers in Western North Dakota. I'll just go through a little bit. I just wanted to get my screen up there and so people could write down my number or email if they wanted to get a hold of me after this, and just do a brief recap if I can get this to move forward. There we go. So like I mentioned, we work with a lot of different partners, and you know, on this call in particular, and it's been pointed out by Steve and Tanner already that and Emily that, you know, a lot of us support each other in a lot of these programs. It's not uncommon for someone in Steve's shop to be working with a landowner, and say it's Chad Meyer working in Western North Dakota will reach out to me and to Tanner and Dane and talk about how we can incorporate different aspects of our programs to help fit the best program for that rancher that we can find. So it's great that we're all able to work that way. It's great that we're all able to work with ranchers, and really I just want to take this opportunity to thank you on the landscape doing this work as ranchers, and just for the work that you do for a lot of reasons that have been mentioned, for grassland health and really keeping conservation on the ground in North Dakota, but also, as my 10-year-old daughter says, I like cows in my belly. So I appreciate you from that standpoint as well. And again, just wanted to say thank you for that. And you know, when we started designing this program, there was a lot of aspects that went into it. You know, obviously including landowners and some of the practices that have been mentioned already. You know, grassland seeding, cover crops, improved grassland management. So that would include things like fencing, water developments. Again, targeting Western North Dakota, but We're also able to partner with different entities. So the Department of Mineral Resources being one of them, and just an example of the kind of partnerships that we have in the conservation world and different agencies. You know, not only have I worked closely with Dane Bicey with Ducks Unlimited on some landowner programs, but also this Beaver Lake waterfowl production area just southwest of Lignite. So Dane was doing some work with a landowner surrounding that WPA. We had an opportunity to use some of the funds from the Outdoor Heritage Fund and from Departmental Resources to rehabilitate the soil that had some damage from previous energy practices out there, do some contaminated soil removal, bring in fresh soil, put in a grazing system, cross fencing, you know, all those things to help make that entire area better both for wildlife and to utilize for ranching. And you know, that really hadn't been done in that area before. You're talking about an area that has had pretty much 15 years with no hoof print, no management, no manure on the landscape, pretty monoculture type stand. So really excited we're able to utilize those relationships between the landowners, the different agencies, nonprofit organizations, and bring a project together. Also working with the U.S. Forest Service out in the national grasslands and the some of the grazing associations out there to you know, get better management on those public lands. And again, assisting those agencies and landowners on providing some resources. You know, I've met with many ranchers in my time with the trust and prior to that, and ranchers know what you need on the landscape. You know where things could be a little more efficient and a little more profitable. And you know, really, I see the Outdoor Heritage Fund and the opportunities that not only the trust has, but our other agencies have, is really providing the resources to put some of those tools into place to assist ranchers that way and keep that the bottom line in the black. So again, it's just an honor to do that. Part of what we did in Bakken 1 that we aren't going to do in Bakken 2 is some of the community projects. So nature interpretive sites and Waterford City and Dunn Center, those are ongoing. But you know, for Bakken 2, we really wanted to focus on the ranchers, keep providing those programs. And one of the things we've seen, and you know, Steve talked about the work that his staff does with private lands, and Tanner and Emily talked about the work they do. One thing we're not seeing is a decrease in demand for some of these resources. So, you know, I've worked with Chad Meyer a lot with Fish and Wildlife Service. I've worked with Dane more than Tanner, just because Tanner covers more East River, I cover West River, where Dane is covering. And you know, there's always projects, there's always landowners calling to ask questions. And I, you know, encourage landowners to, if you have those questions, feel free to call any one of us. We're all pretty familiar with each other's programs and how they work together. I know Steve does a great job of looking how different programs fit for his staff, and you know, we do likewise, as does Ducks Unlimited, and one that's not mentioned is Pheasants Forever so far. They do some pollinator work, and we're able to do some projects with them as well. So for Bakken 2, again, we're continuing to work with landowners. I had a waiting list going into Bakken 2 where, you know, some aspects didn't maybe fit what Tanner had or what Steve and the Fish and Wildlife Service had, but it fit what we were doing in different landscapes and priorities. So, you know, I had a waiting list there. You know, we just kind of kicked this off last week, and calls are already coming in pretty hot and heavy. And it's, to me, it's exciting to be able to again, work with the landowners out there and really provide those opportunities. One thing, you know, we always continue to do, and there seems to be some confusion about this. If you've ever seen our agreements, there's a line, different lines to initial, and one of them is that we make people aware of the plots program. While I have an audience, I'll just say I do not sign anyone up for plots. That's Game and Fish Department's area. So some people read that as they have to be go into plots in order to go into our program. That is not the case at all. The Industrial Commission just asks that we make people aware, if you've never seen the yellow triangle signs, I guess, but make people aware that the plots program is there. And some people do take advantage of it and able to provide more income off those acres, and some prefer to keep their land for family or non-hunting, whatever it may be. But one of the things we're also providing to landowners this time around is ask before you enter signs. This is no cost to the landowner. This is something we provide. So if you would like these signs, even if you don't go into our program, or if you're just looking for signs for your property, these are nice metal signs, I'll mail them to you. And just to, so you know who's coming onto your property, they know how to get a hold of the right landowner. That's an option. That's available to anyone on this call or any real landowner in North Dakota. So we're continuing to do that work with the landowners. We're continuing to enhance outdoor recreation opportunities. I put that in there for the Forest Service because one thing we're seeing a really high increase of is recreational birding. People come from all over the country, in some cases the world, to check birds off their list. I'm up to 2, so I'm not a big birder, but there's it's a big demand. It's a recreational opportunity. It's good for the small communities. It's good for the ranchers that people can see what they're doing out there. And really, what's exciting about what we're doing this time around too is we started a relationship with the Grazing Lands Coalition in Bakken 1 and work through them as some of their mentor network. Some of the landowners in their mentor network, and they were really able to speak the language to their neighbors and ranches around them, and kind of show them what works for them, what didn't work for them, and we're continuing that relationship and increasing those opportunities. So our mentors for the Grazing Lands Coalition with Western North Dakota are aware of our program. They're going to be working with landowners on developing. If someone has questions on where to put pipelines or fences or permanent, temporary, whatever it may be, those resources are available through the Grazing Lands Coalition as well. I'm not a rancher. I help to administer some of these programs, so it's great to have that knowledge out in the field where people can take advantage of it. Just pointing out here, just counties in green are the counties that qualify for Bakken 2. If you're East River, we're not trying to intentionally exclude you. There just seem to be more programs available in the East as compared to the West in years past. So we want to provide those opportunities for landowners in the West. But again, everyone on this call, as Steve showed in his presentation, the numbers that they're doing for Upland acres and the work Tanner and Dane are doing, we're all pretty focused across the state now. So that's a really, really great thing. Just some of the partners that we have for Bakken 2. A lot of these are the same as in Bakken 1. Partnering with energy companies as well. One of the things I didn't mention. And our website. So it's just ndnrt.com. What I have highlighted here is our programs tab. Tanner mentioned our Working Grasslands program. That's been very successful. Partnership program that's been very successful. If you have expiring CRP, we're on the 4th iteration of that. Going on Bakken 2 and other opportunities that our partners have. So again, you can contact any one of us. We're happy to answer your call, happy to help in any way we can. And if we can't do it, we know somebody who can. So just thank you everyone for joining us this evening, and thank you again for what you do.
Excellent. Appreciate it, Jesse. Just a couple questions or just a couple comments before we move into Q&As. And you heard some common themes tonight, or at least we thought there would be by partnering of these groups. But one of the things that kind of stood out to me is that there's a portion of North Dakota that's covered somewheres with some people and some expertise. And I think that came through loud and clear. Another item that I heard kind of a common theme from the group was, basically a straightforward, programmatically rather straightforward and effective. So something that's not overly cumbersome and something that can be effective in putting it on the ground. And so as we listened this evening, we started to hear these things come out, and I think that speaks to their frequency of use. And so I think that goes hand in hand, if you will, especially when you see some of the significant growth, and you see now also some of the monitoring that Emily talked about, and those type of things. So collectively, I think they all become really effective. So with that said, I think we should go and move into a little bit of Q&A. And Trish, have you received any chats specifically?
Yes, I have a question from Facebook Live from our good friend Ann Fisher. Have any of you done work to transition tame grass monocultures to a more diverse native mix? If so, what method have you found to be most successful?
So Trish, that would be keeping the stand, but basically changing it from what it is to something more diverse and possibly some additional warm seasons, that type of thing.
I believe so, yes.
Very good, very good. Who would like to go with that one first? Should we go kind of in the order? Steve, you want to address that?
I can make some comments, and
yeah,
really a couple of different methods that I would recommend, and short of nuking all the tame grasses and starting over, certainly there's more expertise in your Grazing Lands Coalition, to me, to remedy this, by doing some intensive grazing management. If you've got bluegrass out there, you can throw as many cows as you can find on it early in the season and grub it down to nothing. And we've seen a really good response of native grasses coming back to that kind of method. But there's certainly to me personally, there's a grazing solution to most of these questions. If it's really, it's terrible with brome and bluegrass, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort, but you can do it by proper grazing management.
And it probably wasn't created in one day, and you may not remove it in one day. Yeah, very, very good. Okay, Tanner or Emily?
I was going to ask, how much time do you have?
Not that much, Tanner.
Well, how much time does Ann have?
Oh, that's a separate question.
Yeah, I've never done it or helped anybody do that specifically by keeping the grass in place. I've heard of chemically burning that down and starting over completely. And I've seen some success with that. I've heard of folks actually at the America's Grassland conference somewhere in Texas 2 or 4 years ago, somebody was talking about doing that with livestock by managing the, intensively grazing that and then giving it long rest and recovery at the right time for those warm season species to express themselves. But they were also broadcast seeding, and I forget exactly what they call it. Somebody's probably on here knows the term, but they were basically broadcasting it and grazing on top of that and getting seed to soil contact through the hoof action. And they saw some success there, but again, that's a different climate, different soils and things like that. So.
And Emily, does the agronomist want to step into the ring, or?
I just thought of something kind of general, and that would be when, or I guess when, utilizing like programs like the C-CLIP program, you can maybe switch around just grazing, like we're talking about. So, so you can switch around your grazing times in each pasture, potentially, if you have more places for the cows to go.
Yeah. Okay, Jesse?
Yeah, I'll mention a couple things. What Steve said there about the kind of the mob grazing early in the year. In many cases, that native seed stock is there, from surrounding areas, and it's been pollinating and blowing in the wind. It just hasn't had that opportunity to germinate. So that's one option for giving an opportunity to do that. Another one, which I'm not going to start a debate here, but that we've seen in other states is prescribed fire as an effective tool as well in starting that stand. I know Trish wrote a brief article in the Grazing Lands Coalition newsletter about that. There are some resources available for that if someone is interested. Unfortunately, not that many. It's not a popular or common practice in North Dakota, but just throwing it out there if someone is looking at that option. One of the things we saw with one of our initial, it was a tame grass stand back to a native grass stand, is there was a old tree row of Siberian elm, and it wasn't really serving a purpose anymore. It was taking lands out of grazing production basically, and when you have those tree rows, it's really hard to reestablish a native grassland just because of the amount of introduced species coming out of that area. This was in Dunn County, and so we actually are doing some of the tree removals. Old tree rows are dying out. They're don't have that use anymore, and that provides another opportunity for native grasses to take a stand. But like Tanner said, how much time do you have? It can take several years to see the results you're looking for through those different practices. But just some initial thoughts there, Jay.
Yeah, thank you. Two, I want to just kind of capitalize on what Steve mentioned, and that is grazing mentors with the Grazing Coalition. And we have two Leopold Award winners on this evening, and there isn't much they haven't done over the years. And I mean, Gene Gobin and Ken Miller are the two I can see on my screen. They're both Leopold Award winners in North Dakota. They've done some extensive work on grazing, and so there's another resource for people that may be on this evening, of people that they could contact. So I'm speaking out for you, Gene and Ken. So you have no say in this. All you can do is agree to be contacted. So no, they would be excellent. So do we have another question?
Well, Anne is also tagging on to the end of that. She chuckled, of course, first of all, and then said, do any of you use your programs to facilitate this? So I think basically what she's getting at is, do you have any opportunities through your individual programs to transition from that tame grass monoculture to more of a diverse native mix?
Anyone with a program emphasis on it? Okay, so let's start again with Steve.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because I think the answer for all of us is going to be yes, but the details get a little, maybe they're not going to vary between us much either, but certainly all of us would help with cross fences and water developments that you might need to shrink a pasture down so you could mob graze, that kind of thing. We could even help with some temporary fence, where you could move it around and do the mob grazing thing. I think, again, all of us probably have some assistance if you did want to just start over, if you wanted to, nuke everything and go with a seeding program to go that route. But yeah, the answer from our program is certainly, what that looks like would certainly depend on the specific situation that we're in and what their needs would be, and we'd sit down and develop a plan and figure something out and help you as best we could. So
it could become an objective, is that what I'm hearing, Steve? It could become a goal to achieve.
Oh yeah, and we've done it before. Certainly we have people that approach us with that exact question.
Yep.
And we have helped people do that. Again, it can't go into a whole lot of details because you don't know the whole situation and what the infrastructure is like and all that stuff. But
yeah, Tanner?
We're actually currently, I'm in conversations with a rancher near south of Gackle we're actually leaning towards doing what Jesse was talking about with prescribed fire, using Audubon Dakota's program to do that, and then using Ducks Unlimited program to reseed that with a predominantly native species mix. And so, you know, we have some research to do because I've never done that. But it seems like something the landowner's willing to try, and we are too in that specific case. So, but everything that Steve said right along those lines.
Emily, anything additional? Okay, Jesse?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, like Steve said, I mean, every situation is going to be a little different. And if someone approaches us with a question or here's what I'm looking at doing, you know, chances are I'm going to call Steve. Steve's going to call Tanner. Tanner's going to talk to Emily, and we'll figure it out.
You got some resources.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. Trish.
Yes, had another one come in. Dave Anderson was having some audio trouble, so he wanted me to ask if any studies or researching is being done on healing environmentally damaged land using bale grazing.
Okay, well, Steve, start us out.
Yes. And, you know, I don't keep up on that research. And again, some of these questions are fantastic. And I love to hear myself talk and have my opinion, but there's a lot of people on this call other than us that have been talking that are way better equipped to answer that question than certainly I am. Maybe one of these other guys or people, you know, speakers can answer it, but Jay, you may be able to answer it better than any of us. But you know, I know that the Sands have been doing quite a bit of bale grazing. But I just don't know the research myself.
Yeah. Tanner, anything additional?
Talk to Kenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to Kenny Miller.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. When I see his name there, I see my old mentor, older brother, Mr. Miller, and I think he would be a great authority to visit with, and has some good data on bale grazing as well. So all I can tell you for sure is that when I put a spade in the ground after bale grazing, I see more carbon, and that's pretty darn good indicator right there. Jesse, anything you'd like to add on bale grazing attributes?
I was working with Jed Ryder. We worked with him on a few projects, and he got tired of waiting for someone to come and reclaim the gravel scoria on a well pad. So he decided to throw bales on top of that thing. You can't see the well pad anymore. It's still there, but over a few years, I mean, he built up a layer that thick just by using cows. And in different areas, he spreads them around his field. So again, the Grazing Lands Coalition members have this down on how to do that. So I'd refer to Trish, and she can find the right mentor for your area.
Well, you know, and I see we have the Risers on and Dave Bauer on, and these are all people with a lot of background. So one of the big values to me of the Grazing Coalition is their mentor list. You know, people that have agreed to visit with other people about these various things. So my hat's off to them for that. And I agree. I think the expertise is in the audience. Absolutely.
I'll just add a comment to that. As far as the mentor list, if you are interested in finding that information, if you go to the ndglc.com website, there is a tab on there with mentor information, and then also the brochure is right on the website, so you can print that brochure off, and it has everybody's phone numbers, the topics that they're willing to, you know, share and visit about, that they feel comfortable speaking about, and reach out to them. Any one of them is more than willing to visit, and if not, give me a call and I'll, like Jay said, try to hook you up. So next question, speaking of Dave Bauer, he just sent one in. What is the right size water body? What is the right size water body is large enough for good both water for waterfowl and upland game? Also, is there tree plantings for wildlife that work well?
Okay, Steve, you want to start us out again on that particular one, please?
Take a crack at that too. But if you ever want to give somebody else a chance to go first, that's okay too. But
no, we're in a rut. We're not going to get out of this pattern. It's just you're in it.
I'm okay with patterns. That's all right. And like I said, I like to hear myself talk, so it's all right. You know, there's a lot of answers to that question. You know, my personal philosophy is water body sizes. It's good to have a mixture of different sizes on the landscape, you know, because different sizes and depths and different water regimes are different, have different values for waterfowl throughout their life cycle. And so, you know, the small ponds are great for pairing and mating and stuff like that. And then bigger bodies of water, they congregate on there prior to migration and stuff, you know. And so the answer is a good mixture. I don't know about you know, if you're only going to make one pond or something, I don't know what the